Yeah, and if we want to make this as interactive as everyone wants, because it does kind of involve like the things everyone has been talking about before I started. So feel free to ask questions. My title's kind of boring, nutrition, sports, and sleep. But I think everyone's on the right path this morning with kind of this wellness and what's the supplements, what's going on in the world of wellness. And it kind of brought me to the sleep. So I've been listening to more and more podcasts about sleep and how it plays a role in our wellness, as well as my students come in and they're asking about particulars, how to help sleep, what to use for sleep. And I guess I just didn't really know enough to give them direct advice. So I'm hoping this helps kind of give us a broader understanding. So again, I'm Renee. I work out of the Student Health Center at UNR with Dr. Scott. Today we'll learn about sleep recommendations, give reasons why sleep is needed, tools to measure sleep, find out the contributing factors to sleep disturbance in athletes, possible, I'm heavy on the possible, nutrition interventions, and then just kind of general advice on what to provide for our athletes or patients. So fun facts, all vertebrates sleep. And I just kind of gave us some interesting vertebrates. Elephants are the least sleepers. They sleep the less, 2 to 4 hours, I think, in the wild. I think in captivity, they sleep a little more. Dolphins, did everyone know this? That dolphins sleep with half their brain awake, half their brain in deep sleep?
No idea.
I know. And then, we love dogs. So I put adult dogs, they sleep 8 to 13 and a half hours. So I got a lot of this information from the Sleep Foundation website. And for dogs, they reported a study that found that dogs who sleep more during the day are more relaxed and appear happier. So now you have more information for your pets. Next slide. So the National Sleep Foundation's recommendations give the age range and the hours of sleep, which also you can see it's in a range. You kind of see that healthy sleepers change their sleep over time. How was everyone's sleep last night? Or do you know your own magic number? Is it some people, I'm I don't know, probably 7 to 8 is probably a pretty good number for me where I feel rested. What's everyone's magic number?
Entire weekend.
I like it. So yeah, there's not, as you can see, there's not a rule. It's their guidelines, and then they really vary from person to person. So though you'll have these ranges, the individual is going to help you. You're going to be speaking to your patient, your individual, and finding kind of what's good for them. Okay. So sleep is essential for health and well-being. 1 to 2 nights total sleep deprivation, or 1 to 2 weeks partial, you start seeing impairing of cognition, impairing your learning and memory, mental well-being. It disrupts growth and repair of cells and lowers protective response to vaccinations, can alter metabolism of glucose, appetite, and food intake, as well as protein synthesis. So just a little word, back on sleep deprivation, just so we get a little more understanding. It is based on that amount. When we saw the chart, the previous slide, the chart on the amount of sleep, but in sleep medicine, they break it down into quality. So though you may sleep 8 hours, and that's within that recommendation, you might have mini awakenings during the night. I hate that part where you're waking up and your brain won't shut off. So it's like that fragmented sleep affects the quality of sleep. There's acute sleep deprivation, and then there's chronic. So chronic sleep deprivation is greater than 3 months of this, not the amount of time, and the quality is affected. Okay. And this is a reminder for me. Human sleep comprises of 2 types. You have the non-rapid eye movement sleep, the non-REM, and it's broken up into 3 stages. The first 2 being light, and the third being a deep sleep. And that's kind of the restorative sleep. The REM sleep is deemed like the dreaming, quote unquote, wakeful state. And this is where we process new information. And then I just really like this part where a young adult, and they did it for, other age groups, but they broke down the sleep into 61% light sleep, 16% deep, and 23% REM. So you kind of had a reference for studies. Okay. Here's all the tools in the objective category. Is everyone familiar with the polysomnographer? I can't say it. Polysomnographer. Is anyone aware of that measurement? I wasn't. So that one measures your brain waves, oxygen levels in the blood, your heart rate, and breathing. So this is the gold standard for sleep measurement. So this helps kind of lead a doctor or a clinician to a diagnosis. Actigraphy, is everyone familiar with that one? I wasn't either. Learning all the time. So this one relies on interpreting movement. So in terms of, utilizing it for research, you have these strengths and weaknesses, but I was looking it up, and some of the Garmin's, they do that as well. So I don't know if they're technically a research grade tool, but that would be an example. Some of those Garmin watches would be able to kind of measure this activity, this movement your body has, whether it be restful or in an active state. Nearables, just pretty much self-explanatory. And then, all our smartphones and our smartwatches, devices have the ability to measure sleep. The drawback would be they overestimate sleep time. But they're all of these are a way to bring awareness to sleep. Next slide. So subjective sleep tools. These are sleep diaries, sleep questionnaires, and there's even an athlete-specific sleep questionnaire. Sleep diaries, I think, can be simple, cost-effective, and even in your practice, you can kind of start asking these questions anyways. Something like, what time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? What time do you turn the lights out? Do you sleep during the day, napping? And kind of rating your sleepiness and alertness. Are you tired in the day? How much caffeine are you taking in, and alcohol, and exercise too? So, these also have some weaknesses, which might be, right? We can't remember. You're doing a sleep diary and you're like, oh crap, I missed a few days. And then you're trying to remember what you did the previous 2 days. So really they're good as a good start, but then they also have some drawbacks as well. So why is it important for sleep and athletic performance? So it's part of recovery, an adaptive process between bouts of exercise. And we know that increased sleep duration and improved sleep quality are associated with improved performance. So like we know that getting sufficient sleep really helps. And like I said, more and more of us are like hearing this need for more studies, more information. So the Australian Institute of Sport, this said that athletes and coaches ranked sleep as the most prominent problem when asked about causes of fatigue and tiredness. So kind of like if you were looking at a holistic approach, are we looking at the athlete getting enough food and rest, but also, how much sleep are they getting? Partial sleep restriction and sleep deprivation, so a 9 or 2 or more of sleep. So when they looked at all these studies, there wasn't enough information. There were mixed results because of this wide variety in study designs, population conditions, measuring tools, and some studies didn't have control. So all these studies, we don't have yet something specific to say there's a magic number or recommendation for how a person should sleep. And I'll be this was a nice picture. This came out of the British Journal of Sports Medicine. I got a lot of information from this article. So if anyone, it was on the internet, on Google, super easy to get to. So it just shows you the contributory factors for sleep disturbance in athletes, both non and sports specific, which is, when I kind of looked at this and just brought my college athlete into it, it's like these social demands, staying up late with friends or staying up late with your phone, kind of, what is going on with your fatigue? Like how much are you hanging out with friends late at night, maybe drinking, and knowing that could probably affect sleep. And then of course the work study commitments. It's like, again, you're staying up late with friends, but then you have to catch up on your homework, and the need, right? If you're in a major that's especially hard, or you needed to make A's, it's just like, when are you going to sleep? Then I'm just kind of moving over to lifestyle. We'll go in more into the next slides. But they did mention for individual characteristics, gender, they said female gender was identified as a risk factor for lifetime sleep problems in elite French athletes. I'll have to go into more of that study. And also age, with athletes greater than 25 years old, there was a subjective report on the sleep quality index that they also lack sleep compared to less than 20-year-olds. You can just see that, life gets in the way of sleep sometimes. Sports specific, high training loads can be a factor. If the athlete travels, so sleeping in an unfamiliar environment, early morning training. I don't know if everyone's an early morning exerciser or an afternoon. And if you are and it feels good and then suddenly things switch, like I might have my student athlete tell me, they switched practice to even earlier because of the smoke. And then they're all struggling to get enough sleep for that week. Night competition. The night before competition, which I totally get. You'd be nervous before a competition. Long haul travel affecting your circadian rhythms. Having a night competition. So I saw this in my nephew. He had a baseball game. So it goes into like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. You're getting home, you're trying to eat. So, again, you're not getting maybe that full recommendation of hours of sleep. So let's go more into particulars on food and nutrition. Next slide. So the lack of sleep on metabolism and endocrine function, this affects glucose metabolism. And with that, we have decreased brain glucose utilization, alterations in the sympathovagal balance, increases in evening cortisol. It can extend nighttime growth hormone secretions and invite some pro-inflammatory processes. It also affects your hunger fullness hormones, leptin and ghrelin. And you can see there's changes in hunger and appetite and a need for carbohydrate-rich food. So the rationale really behind some of these nutrition interventions or studies with carb and sleep really relates to that serotonin. And serotonin is something that helps, it's a neurotransmitter that helps with the sleep-wake cycle. So they did some studies with carb before sleep. And this study in particular used a glycemic index. So they took either high or low glycemic index meals, 4 hours or 1 hour before sleep. High glycemic meals, 4 hours before sleep, improved sleep latency, which is this time to fall asleep above the low glycemic meal. Again, studies are limited, they're often contradictory, and they're not on athletes. So really the recommendation here, what I would take away from it is still, when I'm treating my athlete, I'm doing an assessment and I'm looking at how they eat. If there are times when the athlete is like eating right before bed, it's likely because they didn't get enough during the day. So really assessing these patterns of eating and making sure, hey, can we try to eat more during the day when your body needs that nutrition the most? And that would be what I would recommend. I'm always interested, because I do treat a fair amount of students with eating disorders. I'm always interested in calorie deprivation and its effects. So malnutrition impacts brain function, including the production of chemicals and hormones that control sleep and wakefulness, resulting in fragmentation of sleep and reduction of slow wave sleep, which is that, remember, that deep restorative sleep. Short-term studies, I just brought up these two. Lieberman showed that with 2 days of calorie deprivation, there were no effects on sleep. A 3-day calorie deprivation with using prolonged fasting, there was some decrease in the number of REM episodes. Again, they seem short-term, you know, it's not a lot of long-term studies on sleep. And just bringing it back to this relative energy deficit in sports. And if I just put this picture up as a reminder of what that is. Again, bringing, like, I'm always interested in making sure the athlete gets enough food to meet that demand. Or, you know, is there some overreaching, and overreaching being like excessive training load. Right now, there's not enough evidence to say it affects sleep. I think we just kind of know in general, not getting enough nutrition to meet your demand can cause a whole litany of other changes in our body. So probably we could say it would affect sleep, but just not enough evidence yet. Okay, here might be the fun part. Dr. Scott's favorite, Tart Cherry juice. Has everyone had that? It's pretty good. I like it. So I just cited this author in this kind of a review of nutrition interventions for sleep. It wasn't necessarily sports specific. I don't think there's enough research with sports and sleep and nutrition. So I'm just kind of pulling it in general. So tart cherry juice, the idea is that it may increase exogenous melatonin. And just a reminder, melatonin is a hormone released by the pineal gland. And that hormone is helpful in that sleep-wake cycle as well. So usually it's you hear people take it as a supplement for short-term use. So I'm sure people take it for long-term. In this study, they used tart cherry juice for 2 weeks, and it was shown to improve subjective insomnia symptoms compared to placebo. And also because it has antioxidants and anti-inflammatory effects may be helpful in this sleep-wake cycle. You need some right now. Is everyone familiar with tryptophan? I liked how the graph to the side, if anyone needs just a refresher on metabolism and how serotonin is released. It's a good one. I always tell my students the need for carb because most of your serotonin receptor sites are in your digestive tract. That I just kind of reinforce carbs being important for multiple reasons, including releasing this serotonin, this like calming, which I didn't know it led to melatonin. So tryptophan, small doses of tryptophan, 1 gram, may improve both sleep latency and sleep quality. And then they just kind of gave the amount of turkey, and I don't do things often in grams, so I just translated it. So you have to eat 10.5 ounces of turkey to get 1 gram of tryptophan, or 1 3/4 cup pumpkin seeds to release some of your tryptophan. Kiwi fruit, me and Dr. Scott also tried this. And my niece was like, I'm totally getting kiwi fruit. See if it helps my sleep. It's one of the few fruits that are high in serotonin, which I would never have thought of. And remember serotonin being a chemical that the body produces naturally. It's a monoamine neurotransmitter. I wouldn't have ever thought it would be concentrated in kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruit's also a good source of antioxidants. So there's an association with disordered sleep and oxidative stress. So that being, if we have something antioxidants, it's kind of helping relax us with decreasing our oxidative stress. And again, not a lot of studies and not on athletes. Valerian root, is anyone familiar with this herb? Valerian root, the results show some subjective sleep quality may be improved. The mechanism is it's binding to GABA type A receptors, which calms the nervous system. But be careful because it may influence the growth hormone secretion. And then with any, this is a good point too, with any supplement that's not regulated for an athlete has to really be careful because getting drug tested, it might show up. So just in review of the nutrition, I didn't do a slide to do a review, like what do we do with nutrition at this point? In that review, I didn't go through all the foods that were in this Halson paper, but just knowing a general healthy diet, again, falls within those recommendations for specifics like carbohydrate, for unsaturated fat, for healthy fats, they did some studies on sleep with those. And just so knowing, what's your diet like? How do you relate to food? Kind of bringing out what they're doing with food and seeing if there's any holes in it. They're restricting, or if they're intermittent fasting or doing some fad diets, you can kind of see where you need more help, or where you can provide your student or patient with more help. Dietitians are great that way to help kind of build that team. Okay. So again, this paper from the British Journal of Sports Med I thought was really interesting. So I just brought their toolbox for practitioners over to you guys. So basically asking your patient or your student, your client about their sleep, and providing them with some sleep education. And it says often. So this could be, the education could include specific to sports and their sleep need for adjusting training time. So if they suddenly changed it to the morning and they're not a morning person, then, maybe understanding where we can adjust training times. Impact of sleep on performance. So just kind of reiterating that it does have an impact on performance. And then all of this is great, but if there's an underlying sleep problem, then we should probably be treating that sleep diagnosis and referring to a sleep specialist to do that. What's everyone's feelings about naps? I thought it was not helpful, but this really, I don't think there's enough direct cause and effect, but they really did encourage naps for the athlete. So supplementing when sleep is short from travel, training times, and just life. Short naps can be less than 30 minutes, and they're shown to enhance mood, alertness, and cognitive performance. And then the recommendation, this was interesting too. I kind of want to try it with the caffeine. So caffeine just prior to a mid-afternoon nap counters the post-lunch dip. And then banking sleep. So banking sleep, this sleep extension has potential to improve athletic performance and mood and reduce stress. This tool may be a good way to ease anxiety leading into an important competition. So even banking sleep 1 week before has shown improvement, which I thought was really cool too. I think with anything, having that life balance, right? If you're going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not taking time for yourself, you're going to feel the effects. But really kind of chilling out and resting is just as important, I think, as the training for sports, actual physical training. So I think a takeaway would be kind of balancing rest with in your life. Any questions?
Yeah, please. Neil, I see you have raised your hand.
Yeah, so I got to ask, because this appears to be a favorite for you and Dr. Scott. Tart cherry juice? Is that something that you can buy in the grocery store?
Yes. And it's cheaper at Trader Joe's than it is at a fancy nutrition stores. It's awesome. And I have people do it all the time. I use it for my gout patients. Supposedly it helps with recovery. It does have melatonin, as Renee mentioned, probably some anti-inflammatory effects. Some of the studies you have to drink a lot, and it is tart, and some people don't like it. So I was holding up the I was holding up the dried tart cherries earlier. Trader Joe's. I don't have any stock in Trader Joe's. But I mix this with raw almonds. And I think Renee would say that's probably a pretty good choice too. Neil, Renee and I both, I think, are of the mind of food as medicine. So when your patients come in and they want to be on supplements, you know, maybe we can say, why not some pumpkin seeds and some tart cherry juice and some almonds? And by the way, you know, kiwi fruit, et cetera. And you're getting in good nutrition that way. And maybe they can, you know, have something to hang their hat on. There are some things in these studies that those things are helpful. But the tart cherry juice, that's the way to go.
And how much, Dr. Scott?
Well, I just have a glass about every day. So I'm probably getting 8 ounces or less. And it does have sugar in it, even though it's, you know, cherry juice. You really have to look on the back of the bottle and have it say 100% tart cherry juice, because they sneak in grape juice and apple juice and fructose and sugar all the time. And it has to just say 100% tart cherry juice. The cherries are Montmorency cherries. You can tell I like this. I have a Montmorency cherry tree. But yeah, it's sneaky, but yeah. And then, you know, I'll have a glass a lot of days. And after a hard workout, I really like it, but you can eat them dried and with nuts. But I think just in general, what Renee is saying is that perhaps food can fill in for some of these folks. So if you get some coming in saying, gee, I really want to be on a supplement to protect my joints, perhaps a sports nutritionist could talk to them a little bit about different foods that may help protect their joints. And that falls right in with sleep when we're talking about athletes. And sleep and weight loss has been in the news recently as something that's important. So everything's connected.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting from this presentation, is that seems to be the basis of things are around sleep and kind of that regenerative process. So that's helpful to kind of think about as well. The cherries that you were talking about, the dried cherries, it's any dried cherry that you can just get, right?
No, you still want the tart cherry.
It says on there, tart, dried cherry.
It says dried pitted tart Montmorency cherries.
Morency, okay.
Yeah, I think it did say the Montmorency in terms of what they used in the studies. And I think in like one of the slides, it'll show you a picture of the juice that is tart cherry juice.
Yeah, it's tricky though, because they try to sneak other kinds of cherries in, or they try to sneak in the grapes and the apples, and you don't want that. You have to look at the back and find out it's real tart cherry juice.
Dr. Scott, can you hold it up on the screen again for everybody to see?
And you know, it's interesting comment that you made there, Dr. Scott, about they got to sneak in the sugar, they sneak in the different fruits. And as Renee was kind of going through the presentation, I was thinking to myself that, you know, in general, the food industry hires thousands of scientists to figure out how they can make food or these processed foods more, and marketers that, you know, how they make these foods taste more and, you know, really get to the basic instinct, I guess, of humans around salt and fat and sugar. And my wife just came home, I think yesterday or the day before, with this big old package of keto friendly blah, 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 right? And it's in bright orange and white. And then you look on the label and it's got 30 grams of sugar. And I'm like, how is that keto? But, you know, she buys into the marketing, and these guys, they just, whereas, you know, on the other side of the fence are folks like you and I and everyone on here who is basing advice on science, but we don't have all the fancy, you know, tools at our disposal to say, oh, here, look at these cherries that are, you know, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and by the way, they're keto friendly and blah, 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 you know, or they put them in colorful packages.
Well, that's true. I try to tell my patients to eat real food, eat things that aren't in packages as much as you can. Yeah, I go milk. I like milk and chocolate milk for people who don't have lactose problem. I know that's in a package, but in general, things that are real are probably going to be better overall.
Yeah, agreed.
Than the things in the orange packages.
Yeah.
Except nacho cheese Doritos.
Thank you, Dr. Scott.
Kelsey, you had a question?
I do. So knowing that nutrition is beneficial not only for performance, but also recovery and sleep, do you know if UNR specifically or other universities have a program for athletes to encourage them to eat more nutrition, like real food, rather than going the cheaper route and buying fast food? Because I know as a student athlete, budget may be a struggle. So are there programs that promote that for student athletes?
I know some of the athletics on this campus, they do provide food, but it's not across the board. I know like maybe the football players get something like a buffet, and then the cross country athletes don't. So I don't know, like, there's like the powers that be provide the food. They don't have a sports dietitian specific sports. They pay for the student health fee so they can come see me. I don't know if there's like, I try not to restrict my students, right? Because I'm doing a full assessment, and if they are struggling to get access to food, I take that in consideration, right? I think technically our campus would be a food desert because they can't just go to the store quick, just walk there within whatever the distance to make it a food desert technically, but I don't think they can easily go to the store and get some whole foods. And then, yeah, right, they're limited to cooking in their dorm. So it's like, really, you have to have all the knowledge that you can to meet your patient, your student where they're at. And right. And it's not just all or nothing. It's not like, okay, you're doing it all wrong, take out all the packaged food. It's just like kind of balancing out. And some athletes, they work so hard, their performance or their training is so high that they do need more concentrated food with more concentrated nutrition. They probably do need, an In-N-Out burger once in a while to even meet those needs that are, 3,000, 5,000 calories. So, I'm just you're balancing everything out and trying to get them everything without, and you're working with psychology too. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's a complicated situation for the athletes here.